His fingers rested against my neck, not harsh, just steady, like he needed something solid to ground himself. I couldn't catch my breath. Those eyes never wavered. "You started as just paperwork," he murmured. "Now I can't imagine letting you go. Want to know what happens next? Hit that subscribe button and stick around. This story's only beginning. I never thought my world would shift inside an elevator." The thing was ancient, trimmed in tarnished brass, so eerily quiet I swore it could read my thoughts. Standing there by myself, gripping my jacket like armor, pulse racing as I realized I was about to face the one man who held the power to rescue my mother, or destroy what little we had left. The doors slid open without a sound. The atmosphere inside Hale and Co.'s executive floor didn't feel like ordinary air. It felt like judgment. Rich mahogany, hints of cedar mixed with leather, windows offering a razor-sharp view of the skyline that made me feel insignificant just being near it. Each footstep rang out against the marble as I entered, like I was intruding on a world far beyond my reach. Sebastian Hale was already there waiting. He didn't glance up when I walked in. Behind a desk massive enough to serve as a judge's bench, he sat in a black suit, no tie, shirt open just enough to reveal the strong line of his throat. Dark hair slightly mussed, as if even sleep couldn't tame it completely. Those hands powerful, exact, held a single sheet of paper. "Miss Tran," he said without preamble, voice deep and metallic. "Have a seat." I sat down. Being invisible was my specialty, but this man made me feel transparent. Not delicate, just completely see-through. "Your mother's debt to Red Hawk Holdings is $642,000. They're calling it in after your father defaulted. He died last year, am I right?" I nodded. "Yes," he didn't even blink. "You won't be able to pay that back. Not in time." "No," I admitted. My voice smaller than I wanted. Silence stretched between us. Then he slid the paper across to me. "So we're here to make a deal." I looked down, expecting threats or payment schedules. Instead, there was just one sentence printed in bold black letters across the center. "In exchange for complete debt forgiveness, the undersigned agrees to provide Sebastian Hale with one embrace. Single occurrence, no additional contact, no repetition. Length, 60 seconds. I stared at it, then back at him. "This is a joke." For the first time, he looked directly at me. Those eyes gray-blue, empty yet somehow electric, like the calm before lightning strikes. "I never joke," he said. "I don't get it. You don't need to," he replied coolly. "You just need to sign." This was insane. Who drafts legal documents for an embrace? I kept searching his expression for some clue, some tell that would explain this bizarre moment. All I found was perfect control, a man who'd learned to feel nothing long ago. "It's just an embrace," I whispered. "Exactly. Nothing beyond that. Afterward, you walk away. Your mother's debt vanishes. Transaction complete." I gripped the chair's edge. My heart thundered so loud I was certain he could hear it. "Why me?" He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he leaned back slightly, shadows sharpening his jaw. "I could explain," he said quietly, "but then you might second-guess yourself. And hesitation wastes time. You don't have much left." He was right. The bank's final notice gave us 7 days. After that, we'd lose the shop, and my mother, who hadn't smiled in a year, would lose the last thing my father had left her. I stared at the paper again. Just an embrace. So why did it feel like standing at the edge of a cliff? "I don't want anything else," I said quietly. "Nobody touches me without my permission." His gaze sharpened. "Not offended something else?" For a moment, something flickered across his features. Recognition, regret. He nodded once. "You'll be safe. This is purely business." But it didn't feel like business. It felt like bait. And I, desperate, terrified, foolish me, was already caught. Still, I signed. My hand trembled as pen met paper. My signature looked so foreign next to his soft curves against sharp precision. When I looked up, he was standing. "We'll arrange a private ceremony this Friday," he said. "Ceremony? Legal formality," he added flatly. "You'll be compensated. I'll handle the arrangements. You show up, fulfill your role, deliver what we agreed upon." Fulfill my role. It should have sounded protective. Instead, it sounded like surrender. I stood slowly, legs unsteady. The room felt colder than when I'd entered, though the temperature hadn't changed. He walked me to the door without speaking. As his fingers touched the handle, he finally spoke again. "Don't be late." The doors closed behind me, and the elevator began its descent. I didn't cry or scream or fall apart. I just stood there watching my reflection blur in the golden walls, asking myself the only question that mattered. Why does something as simple as an embrace feel like I just gave him my soul? I arrived at the church 20 minutes early and still felt behind schedule. The sky hung overcast, that particular gray that drains color from everything, like the city had hit pause. Standing on the steps of St. Agnes Chapel in a borrowed dress that didn't quite fit, clutching a coat too thin for November weather, the dress hem fluttered in the wind. I'd sewn it myself, yet somehow it didn't feel like mine. No flowers, no music, no guests, just an empty aisle flanked by cold pews and a ceiling too high for someone like me. Light filtered through stained glass, painting the room in crimson and gold. But even that felt borrowed, meant for someone else's special day. A man in a black suit waited by the altar. Tall, motionless, untouchable. Sebastian Hale, he didn't move when I entered, didn't look back, just stood there, hands clasped, like he was preparing for a business meeting. Not a wedding dot, my heels echoed across the marble. I reached the altar with my breath caught in my throat. "This is insane," I whispered. "Yes," he agreed, "and binding." The officiant, discreet man in his 50s, probably paid well to ask no questions, began the briefest ceremony I'd ever witnessed. No vows, no ring exchange, no kiss. Just two names read aloud, followed by two signatures, and a line that made my stomach turn. "This union is entered in accordance with private contractual terms." That was it. No applause, no celebration, just the sound of my pen scratching across paper again, like deja vu from a nightmare I'd already lived. I half expected him to disappear immediately after, but he didn't. Sebastian offered his arm mechanically, like a man escorting a stranger to her execution. I took it because I didn't know what else to do. A car waited outside, sleek, black, tinted windows, no visible driver. As we settled inside, the door clicked. Shut with the finality of a prison cell, he sat beside me in silence. I tried to breathe, but the air felt thick with something I couldn't name. Not cologne or perfume, something darker. Control, power, restraint. I risked a sideways glance. He stared straight ahead, jaw tight, expression unreadable. His suit looked tailored to the shape of silence itself. His presence filled the entire car while still leaving empty space between us. "What happens now?" I asked quietly. "You come with me. We complete the contract." His voice was flat, emotionless, just fact. Still, the word complete felt heavier than it should have done. We drove uptown, past streets I'd never walked. Townhouses with golden door handles, shops that didn't display prices, people who move like nothing could touch them. Then the car turned into an underground garage, rising into a penthouse that redefined space in Manhattan. Glass walls, white marble floors, a fireplace already crackling. It looked more like an art gallery than a home. "This way," he said. I followed him down a hallway, into a bedroom fit for royalty or ghosts. Everything was immaculate, cold, large enough for echoes. He stopped at the room's edge. turned toward me, and finally met my eyes. "We do this now," he said. "The embrace?" He nodded once. "Just the embrace," I swallowed. "And then you take me home?" "My debt is cleared. I never see you again." For some reason, that last part felt like a bruise before it even landed. I stepped closer. He opened his arms, slow, deliberate, like he'd done this before but forgotten how to mean it. I stepped into them. He was warm, not comfortingly so. More like fire behind a locked door, dangerous if you linger too long. His arms wrapped around me, cautious at first, then tighter. His hands settled at the small of my back. My face pressed against his chest, and I could hear his heartbeat. Steady, slow, infuriatingly calm. I expected discomfort, awkwardness. Instead, I felt heat, not attraction or affection, just something raw. Something alive. The timer in my mind began counting down. 60, 59, 58, ... Then his hand shifted slightly. A change in pressure. A breath caught between us. The space shrank. 43, 42, ... I felt when he inhaled. When his hand curved against my spine, just barely. When his lips lowered, not to kiss, but to whisper. "You feel real." 22, 2, 1, ... I froze. His voice wasn't cold. It was hollow, wounded. 10, 9, ... My fingers clenched against his suit. He didn't let go. I felt the minute pass, but he didn't move. Neither did I. Then his voice again, low like breaking glass. I told myself it would be enough. With that, he stepped back. The room felt colder. "I'll have the car take you home," he said, already turning away. "You fulfilled your part." I didn't answer, because even though he was letting me go, something inside me wasn't walking out with me. I didn't go straight home. I told the driver to take the long route, even though it was cold and getting darker. I just couldn't return. Not yet. Not like this. Not with my skin still humming from a 60-second embrace that felt like it had cracked open something locked inside me. My mother called twice. I let it ring both times. What would I even say? "Hi, Mom." I embraced a billionaire and signed away my dignity. "But don't worry, the debt's gone. We're saved. Now. Not yet." I leaned my head against the cool window. The city blurred past, but my mind was trapped in that room. In his arms. In that moment, no, those moments, when he refused to let go. He'd said 60 seconds, 1 minute, one embrace. But it wasn't. He held me longer. He whispered. He broke his own rule, and I let him. The next morning, I woke feeling hollow. My mother was humming in the kitchen, her way of coping. She didn't ask me anything. Maybe she thought not asking made it easier for me to pretend it had been just business, but it didn't feel like business. Not anymore. I tried returning to work. At the shop, losing myself in fabric and thread. But even the sewing machine's rhythm couldn't drown out his voice from the night before. "You feel real." Why had he said that? And why did it make my hands shake now? 3 days passed. I told myself that was it. We'd made a deal. I kept my end. He was a man of contracts and clauses and clean exits. But on the 4th day, a delivery arrived. Not flowers or a thank you. Note a box inside, a coat. Wool, custom cut, deep forest green with silk lining, hand-stitched seams. Far too expensive for someone like me. No note, just a tag. Don't freeze. H. My chest tightened. It wasn't a gift. It was a reminder of that moment, that room, that touch. Later that evening, walking back from the train, I saw him. Sebastian across the street, standing beside a black car like he didn't belong on Earth, like he'd stepped out of a dream I hadn't asked for. Our eyes met. He didn't wave or smile, just looked, then turned and walked away. That should have been the end of it. But I crossed the street. "Wait," I called after him. He stopped but didn't turn around. I caught up. "Why are you here? Why do you think?" His voice was quiet but sharp enough to cut glass. I folded my arms. The contract is finished. You said no more contact? I know. Then what is this? He looked at me then, really looked. Suddenly, I wasn't. Just some girl in a borrowed coat. I wasn't background noise in his perfect world. I was center stage. I thought the embrace would be enough, he said. It wasn't. Silence stretched between us like a live wire. I didn't ask for more, I whispered. I know, he said again, this time with something softer beneath the steel. But you gave more. I stepped back. What are you trying to say? That I'm not finished feeling you yet? That night, I didn't sleep. I kept hearing it over and over. I'm not finished feeling you yet. No one had ever said anything like that to me. Not like that. Not with that look, that storm behind his eyes. As if wanting me had broken something inside him. I tried to pretend I wasn't effective. I failed. 2 days later, I was in the shop late, fixing a hem when the bell chimed. Almost closing time. I didn't look up at first. I need your help, the voice said. My hand froze. Sebastian Hale, standing in a cramped Queen's tailor shop like it was the most natural thing in the world. He held up a jacket. You stitched this, didn't you? I nodded. Custom order. Italian wool. It tore. I frowned. You must have handled it. Roughly. His lips barely lifted. Maybe I wasn't gentle enough. There was something electric in the air, a charge I couldn't shake. He stepped closer. I stepped back. He placed the jacket on the counter, then didn't move. You shouldn't be here, I said. I know. I have nothing else to give you. That's not why I'm here. Then why? Because when I held you, he said quietly, I felt something I haven't felt in 10 years, and it terrified me. I couldn't breathe. And the worst part, he continued, voice like thunder held back by clouds. It wasn't just how you felt in my arms. It was how I felt when I let go. He looked down like a man remembering a dream that shouldn't have meant anything, but did. I should have told him to leave. Should have reminded him that what we shared was written on paper, not carved in stone. But I didn't, because some part of me, stupid, dangerous, human, didn't want him to leave. Some part of me had started craving the echo of him. His silence, his heat, his arms, even his rules. Because the moment he broke them, so did I. I didn't tell anyone he came to the shop. What would I say? That the man who bought an embrace showed up asking me to mend his jacket and nearly split open something I'd been trying to keep buried? It sounded ridiculous. Worse, it sounded dangerous. But that night, I replayed everything. His words, his eyes. The way his voice faltered just once when he said, it terrified me. Men like Sebastian Hale weren't supposed to get scared. Yet he did because of me. The next day, I received a text. No name, no number. Just 4 p.m., 71st, in Park. Come if you want the truth. My thumb hovered over the screen. I didn't reply, but I went. It was an office building on the Upper East Side. Sleek, silent, the kind of place that didn't advertise itself. The receptionist didn't ask for my name, just pressed a button and directed me to the 18th floor. Elevator opened into a private study. Sebastian stood by the window, looking out over Manhattan like he owned it. Maybe he did. He didn't turn around. You came. You mentioned truth, I replied. I don't like being kept in the dark. He nodded, but said nothing. I stepped further into the room. Books lined the shelves in perfect symmetry. A decanter of whiskey sat untouched beside 2 glasses. The air smelled of cedar, weather, and time. You asked why I wrote that contract, he finally said, still facing away. I did, and you owe me. An answer, he turned. The mask was still there, the polished exterior, the sharp jawline, the perfect posture. But his eyes, something had shifted, like they'd stopped hiding and started grieving. I lost someone, he said simply. Years ago. A wife, I guess. He gave a humorless half smile. Legally, yes. In every other way, no. She was beautiful. Brilliant. She wanted things I didn't see coming. I stayed quiet, letting him talk. She fell in love with someone else. Someone close to me. It wasn't just betrayal, it was annihilation. It made me question everything I believed about connection, touch, trust. He walked to the shelf, ran his hand along the book's spine without pulling it out. I haven't touched anyone since her. Not without knowing I could survive the loss afterward. I felt a weight settle in my chest. He looked at me again. That contract wasn't about control. It was about containment. Containment. I gave myself permission for 60 seconds. One embrace, 1 minute to feel something, then nothing more. Because if I planned it, I could end it. I could manage it. But you didn't. He shook his head. No, I didn't. There was something unbearably human in his admission. Not weakness or apology vulnerability. And it shook me. I took a step toward him. Why me? I don't know, he said honestly. Maybe because you walked into my office and looked at me like I wasn't a god or a monster, just a man. He paused. Or maybe because when I held you, I felt alive for the first time in years, and I didn't want to stop. He poured a glass of whiskey and offered it to me. I didn't drink it. Instead, I walked to the window and looked out. You're still afraid? Yes, so am I. He was quiet for a long moment. Then softly, I don't want to hurt you. I turned to him, then stopped holding back like it's the only way to protect me. He blinked once, then without thinking, he moved. Not fast or desperate, just decisive. He stepped inches away from me. Told me to leave, he said, voice low. I can't, I whispered. Tell me this was a mistake. It wasn't. Then tell me what you're afraid of, I swallowed. That I'll want more and you'll disappear. He looked down, exhaled slowly, then raised his eyes again, clear, steady. I'm not leaving. We didn't kiss. Not yet. We stood there breathing the same air, tethered by something fragile but real. Not lust, not a contract choice, and I knew, right then, that this wasn't about debts anymore. It wasn't about pity or rescue. It was about two broken people leaning toward the same fire, knowing full well it might burn them both. Later that night, back in my apartment, I stared at the city from my window and realized something strange. I wasn't scared anymore. Not of him, not of what he might want from me, but of what I might want back, because Sebastian Hale was no longer the man who bought an embrace. He was the man who let me see the cracks in his armor, and God help me. Wanted to step through them. It started with thunder, low, distant, like a warning beneath my ribs. The kind of sound that makes you feel something's about to happen. Something you can't stop once it starts. I was already at the penthouse by the time rain began falling in sheets. Sebastian hadn't called me. I came anyway, not because I was invited, but because I couldn't stay away. Not after the way he'd looked at me that night. Not after hearing the edge in his voice when he said, I'm not leaving. I stood in his hallway, soaked to the skin. He opened the door with that same unreadable calm, but his eyes cracked. The silence in half. You walked here? He asked, stepping aside. I needed to, I said. I needed to know if I could face you and still breathe. He didn't answer. He just closed the door, locked it, and turned toward me like gravity had finally snapped. I don't remember who moved first, only that. I was against the wall and his hands were on me, urgent, unyielding. Rain still clung to my dress, to my body, and he didn't hesitate. He pulled the fabric downward in one motion, bearing my shoulder, my collarbone, the curve of my chest. His mouth. FOLWED, I gasped. Not from fear, from shock at how fast it happened, how much I wanted it. His breath was hot against my neck. His stubble scraped my skin in the best way. My fingers reached up, digging into his shirt, pulling him closer. I told myself not to touch you again, he muttered against my skin. Told myself I'd ruin you. You can't ruin something that already broke, I whispered. He froze. Then his mouth crushed mine. It wasn't slow. It wasn't sweet. It was a war of heat and hunger and hands that didn't ask permission anymore. My back hit the wall again, and this time his thigh pressed between mine, parting them, lifting me just enough to steal every breath I had left. Clothes weren't removed, they were torn. The sound of fabric ripping echoed louder than the thunder outside. His hands were everywhere, my waist, my ribs, the curve of my breast, then lower. So low I arched into him without shame. I was already trembling when he picked me up. Effortless. He carried me through the open living space, past flickering firelight to the bedroom, like I was something he couldn't afford to drop. He laid me down but didn't pause. His mouth filmed the space between my thighs like he'd been waiting years for this exact moment. I cried out. He didn't stop, didn't hesitate. He held me there firm, focused, until I broke apart in his hands, back arching. Fists curled into the sheets. I was still shaking when he hovered above me, sliding out of what little he still wore. Our eyes locked. Are you sure? He asked. He was already hard, already pressing at my entrance, but he waited. I began. I know, he said softly. That's why I'll go slow. But he didn't, not really. Because once I nodded, once I said please, he drove into me in one deep, claiming thrust. I gasped. He held still, letting me adjust, forehead pressed against mine, breath ragged. You okay? He asked. I nodded again. He moved. God, he moved slow at first, then deeper, faster. Each stroke stealing more of my mind. He kissed me like a man unraveling, touched me like he didn't believe I was real, whispered my name like it was a prayer and a curse. Mine, he growled into my ear. I clenched around him, my nails dragged down his back. Yours. He lost control then, flipped me onto my stomach, pulled me back against him, took me harder. His fingers dug into my hips, and I gave him everything. No more fear, no more pretense, only heat, only want, only him. When we both came, it was violent like a storm breaking against stone. My scream was swallowed by his mouth. His moan broke in my name. We collapsed together, sweat and rainwater and sighs. The storm outside had faded, but the one between us was still humming beneath our skin. He wrapped an arm around me, pulling me to his chest. I didn't mean for this, he said, voice low. I just wanted one embrace, 1 minute. You lied, I murmured against his skin. I know. He kissed my forehead. I don't want you to leave. I won't. I meant it not because of the sex, not because of the heat, but because I'd never felt like this before with anyone. And deep down, I knew he hadn't either. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I couldn't, because I didn't want to. Lying against Sebastian, my skin still tingling, his hand resting low on my back like a vow, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace, but peace is dangerous. It lets you imagine it could last. And I knew better. When I woke, he was already gone. The penthouse was quiet. Too quiet. I walked barefoot through the living room, wrapped in one of his button-downs. The city outside was starting to wake, but this space felt suspended in time like last night had never happened, except it had. My body remembered all of it. Every kiss, every thrust, every whisper that didn't sound like a man in control, but like a man surrendering. And I had surrendered too. Willingly, fully, maybe too fully, I found a note on the kitchen counter. Us, A single line written in clean, slanted ink. Had to meet with the board. I'll be back tonight. Don't leave. Cold words, no warmth, just instructions. A tremor started in my chest. I reminded myself not to overthink. This was Sebastian Hale, the man who expressed emotion like it cost him blood. A note was practically poetry in his language. Still, I didn't like how cold it felt, so I distracted myself. Showered, dressed, made coffee I didn't drink. But I couldn't sit still. Something nagged at me, subtle and sharp, like a thread pulled too tight. I wandered into his study. The door was unlocked, inside. Minimalist decor, glass shelves, dark. Wood, a massive desk with a state-of-the-art monitor still glowing. I didn't mean to look at the screen, but my eyes landed on it anyway. Emails open, highlighted at the top a message from his executive assistant, subject, Aurora trans status, assuming she's still playing the part. Either way, your instinct was right. First-timers always get attached. I froze. The words blurred, playing the part, first-timers. Get attached. My lungs stopped working. My chest clenched like it couldn't contain what had just detonated inside me. I didn't read anything else. I didn't need to. I stumbled out of the office, heart pounding. Blood cooled. By the time Sebastian came home that night, I was packed. He found me standing by the door, coat on, bag in hand. Aurora, he said, alarm flickering behind his eyes. Where are you going? I held up my phone. The screen showed the email. His face drained of color. You went through my files. No, I said. I walked into your study, and it was just there, open like a landmine waiting to go off. He stepped forward. That email wasn't what? I snapped. Wasn't about how you set me up. How I'm just some predictable virgin who got attached. So easily? He went subtle, but I saw it. That told me enough. I laughed bitterly. You had a plan, didn't you? One embrace, 1 minute. And if I broke? Well, that's on me. It's not like that. Then tell me how it is. I didn't expect to care, he said quietly. And you think that helps? He exhaled through his nose, dragging a hand down his face. I was trying to protect you. No, I said, voice shaking. You were protecting yourself from the moment we met. You made me sign my dignity away on paper and called it kindness. You thought if you controlled every second, it wouldn't feel real. But guess what? I stepped closer, eyes burning. It felt real to me. His jaw tightened. It was real. Then why did you let them talk about me like I was some experiment? Silence. That was all I needed. I walked past him. His hand shot out lightning fast and grabbed my wrist. Don't, he said. Not a command, a plea. I looked up at him, and for the first time he looked scared. Not angry, not cold, just broken. I didn't plan this, he whispered. I didn't expect to beg, but I'm begging now. My chest cracked because I wanted to believe him. But some things, once said, can't be unsaid. Some wounds bleed quiet, I pulled. My wrist free and left. Outside, the rain had started again, because of course it had. The city blurred as I walked. People passed me without seeing me, just another girl with a suitcase and a storm in her heart. I didn't cry, not until I reached my apartment. And even then, only when the door closed behind me. Only when I knew. He couldn't see. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of what had happened, trying to remind myself of the truth. This had started as a transaction. I signed the contract. I agreed to the terms, but love doesn't care about terms. It doesn't sign agreements or follow rules. And once you give your body to someone, you don't just give skin, you give breath, memory, hope. I had given him everything. And now all I had left was a suitcase and silence I didn't know how to fill. Sebastian Hale didn't beg. Not in business. Not in war. Not in love. Until now. 3 days after she left, He was standing outside a small tailor shop in Queens, soaked to the bone, staring at a closed sign through rain-blurred windows. The place was dark. So was he. He hadn't shaved. Hadn't eaten more than coffee and regret since Aurora walked out the door. He'd read her name in every email, heard her voice in the static between phone calls, smelled her skin in every shirt she touched on. It was driving him mad. But he deserved it because he'd let her go thinking she meant less than she did. Because he'd hidden behind silence, behind contracts and calculated touches, instead of saying the only thing that ever mattered, stay. Earlier that day, he'd fired his assistant. Not for the email, for the tone. You don't get to talk about her. Like that, he'd said, jaw clenched so tight it ached. Not to me, not ever. Then he'd locked himself in his office and read every message he'd ever sent Aurora. All the things he didn't say stared back louder than the ones he had. He couldn't run a company, not when the one person who made him feel human had vanished from his world like a dream. He didn't deserve to keep. Now he stood in the cold under the soft glow of the shop's hand-painted signage, wondering how something so small could hold so much of his soul. A woman passed by under an umbrella, paused, looked at him once, then quickly turned away because people don't expect to see billionaires standing alone in the rain. People don't expect to see Sebastian Hale broken. He stayed until his shoes were soaked through. Then he turned, and she was there, Aurora, standing on the sidewalk holding a grocery bag, looking like the wind had knocked the air from her lungs the second she saw him. Neither of them moved. The city swirled around them. Then, slowly, she walked. Forward, one step, then another, until they were face to face in the middle of a quiet block where everything else faded. You're soaked, she said, voice barely a whisper. I didn't want to miss you, he replied. Why? Because I can't lose you. She swallowed hard. Sebastian, no, he said, shaking his head. Don't do the thing where you pretend it didn't mean anything. Don't protect me from the fallout. I built this. I ruined it. I know. Her throat worked, but she stayed silent. He stepped closer, eyes locked on hers. I'm sorry, he said, and his voice cracked. I thought I could handle feeling again in small doses, controlled doses. One embrace, 1 minute. But the truth is, he trailed off, chest heaving once. Then he dropped to his knees. Right there in the rain, in front of her. I've never needed anyone the way I need you. She stared down at him, stunned. This man who had built an empire. This man who never knelt for anything. On his knees, for her. Get up, she said, voice shaking. People are staring. I don't care, he replied, still looking up at her like she was the only solid thing in a collapsing world. You're the only one.